Today we have Alyse Dunavant-Jones with Grants for Nonprofits, which I'm pretty excited about. Alyse, if you're in the audience, you can kind of come up and sit up here.
Okay, I think I've got my projector up, so I'll go ahead and I'll get started.
Sure, thank you. And yep, let's welcome Elise. And I'm glad, I'm so excited to kind of see this get presented. Yay!
So first off, hi. I'm Alyse Dunavant-Jones. I'm the Assistant Director at the Community Virtual Library, and I'm also the Treasurer for CVL's parent nonprofit, New Media Arts Inc. Sorry. And I've put CVL's website in the chat for everyone if you haven't been there before. A little on my credentials. I have a bachelor's degree in writing and a Master of Library Information Science degree. And in 2018, as part of my MLIS coursework, I took a grant writing course. And so that's where a lot of my information kind of started. So since then, I've continued researching grants and practices around writing them and everything, especially in the context of virtual world organizations. So in my course that I took, I focused on the community virtual library and learned a lot. So just kind of out of curiosity, is there anyone here that's written a grant proposal? You can just type a Y, or if you're up for sharing more details, I'd be happy to hear, how it went, where it was, what it was for. I know that I'm really happy to see that quite a few folks have written them. Thank you. Yeah, so if you have a little bit of an idea of what I stumbled into in 2018. I also wanted to mention that I did a similar presentation to this last year. This one has some new information as well. Gentle Heron, yeah. So yeah, some of them even successful. Ooh, very nice. Oh, awesome. That's wonderful. And I also wanted to mention, if you have any favorite grant resources that you want to share, feel free to just plunk them in the chat. I'll make sure that I save the chat. I might be able to use them later in some of the resources that I've compiled. So that would be really helpful if you happen to have any. And I should mention the name of the presentation is CVL Collection Highlight Grant Resources. So that's my big thing today, is I'm going to be highlighting some of CVL's grant resources, in addition to giving some quick info about grants in general. Grant Station, SNPO. Oh, awesome, Selby. So I'm going to just kind of define grants real quick. Those of you who have already applied for them have a pretty good understanding, but this will help. Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, I'll have to look that up, SNPO. Oh, specifically for new grant writers. That's awesome. So the big thing is that grants aren't donations. You have to apply for a grant. You have to use it for a very specific purpose or project. Donations tend to be a lot more flexible. And a grant requires applicants to give details about how you're going to use the money, when you're going to use it, who's going to use it. And then you also have to report back about how it went. If you don't do that, then it can kind of negatively affect your organization's reputation. It can make you less likely to get grants in the future, that sort of thing. And so you'll need to submit a budget, a timeline, your goals and objectives, and your plan for how you're going to meet them, how you're going to measure success, and how you're going to report back. And you also need to have the names and credentials of people that are on your board. Which can be difficult in virtual worlds sometimes, because a lot of folks are anonymous, which is 100% their right. but it can make it hard for applying for grants. I will mention there are some grants out there that have unrestricted funds. I have yet to find one, so if anybody does, please share. This is something I was talking with one of New Media Arts people, and she'd mentioned you hear about Elon Musk giving out, thousands of dollars with no strings attached, but we never come across that. So there definitely are some that are more flexible, but the majority of them that you find have a lot more going on, where you have to do a lot of reporting and stuff. So this slide highlights steps that you should consider before grant seeking. In a previous proposal, I've given a lot more detail. Previous presentation, I've given a lot more detail, but I want to make sure I have time for some of CVL's resources. Foundations are a little more unstructured. Oh, got it. Good to know. Family and corporate foundation. Gotcha, that makes sense, yeah. And I want to mention that if you find, oh, thank you, Namara sent me the SNPO link, that'll be really helpful. If any of these are intimidating, because that's one of the biggest things about grants for me, I found it intimidating. I think some folks probably won't, but I did. Feel free to contact CVL if you're kind of trying to figure out where to get started. We can always go through each of these steps with you and kind of figure out, where you need to focus. But so regarding collecting and organizing your administrative documents, this would include your partner and parent orgs that you might be applying for a grant with. You want to know who your board and leaders are in Second Life and in the physical world. That's what I touched on briefly before. That can be hard for nonprofits in virtual worlds sometimes, but that's what a lot of them need. Know your budget and tax info. Know, or at the very least, know who to go to about it. So know who your treasurer or your CFO is that can answer those questions for you if you're not a money person. If you have documentation regarding your community or your users, go ahead and organize that. If not, you're going to want to start collecting it. And I've made a note that you can do that before searching for a grant. That's going to be, ideally, a lot of grants want that kind of information. But my professor in 2018 had mentioned there are exploratory research grants as well. So if you know that you want to learn more about your community, but you're kind of trying to figure out how to go about it, you can look for a grant that's specifically there for research, or there are some for startups even that might give seed money to help look into this stuff. So if you have no idea how to get started, that could be your project, and that's something that was recommended for CVL back when we were looking at stuff. You're also going to want to have a regular fundraising routine of some kind, ideally in and out of Second Life. But if your projects mostly require Linden dollars, you might be able to get away with having most of your expenses in world and saying, we have this much virtual monies, we need this much real world monies, or what have you. But kind of having the money flow is a big one, because a lot of grants want you to cover a percentage of the costs. You're also going to want to establish at least one person that's dedicated to grant seeking and writing, submitting, following through. It could be a leader, it could be an intern that you hire specifically for that purpose, or it could be a volunteer, but they have to commit to the long. They're going to be the ones conducting research, doing the writing and editing. They're going to be partnering with and working with others, and that includes any grant organizations, because that's a big part of grant writing, working with the foundation or whoever is issuing the grant, to see if you're a good fit. Kind of developing that relationship and that rapport is really important. And they're going to need to stick through to the end of the project. You also want to see, consider your partnerships. Is there another organization with goals that's similar to you? This could help you get the right tax status. A lot of grants require a 501c status. And if you don't have that, you could partner with another organization that does, and they could be what fiscal sponsor, where they basically vouch for you. but they've got to submit all of their information. So you have to make sure they're willing to divulge that information for the grant, their board members and everything. Then the last one is brainstorm your org's needs, any potential projects that you have that you'd like funds for. This is important because it's really tempting to do it the other way around, to do a grant search and see what's out there and then tailor a project to what's out there. But that doesn't always work if it's not something that you need done. So if you're not looking to develop your website, but you find a grant that is all about developing a website and you go ahead, apply and get that grant, well, you didn't really need a new website, like that sort of thing. So strive for an 85 to 90% match. You're probably not going to find something incredibly specific for a virtual world. There's not going to be something that says, we're going to give you money because you want to do a Dickens project presentation in Second Life. Like, you're probably not going to find that, but you might find something about creating a virtual exhibit or a virtual presentation. And that'll make you more likely to land the grant as well as be more successful in executing it. So that can be frustrating when you see grants that you'd be eligible for, but you're not looking into that kind of project right now. So it's just important to think about it that way. Right. Yeah, exactly. So there could be, there's some flexibility in some of the different grants out there. And so it doesn't have to be perfect, but it needs to be close enough so that you can make a case for why they should give you their money. I'm going to kind of step away from grants specifically right now because the biggest barrier against grants for small nonprofits is manpower. Recruiting volunteers is my number one recommendation before grant seeking. Just kind of full stop. Much easier said than done, but this is something that both New Media Arts and CVL have come across. We have things we want to do, but we don't always have the people to do them, and that can be very difficult. So as I've been looking into grants, I've stumbled upon a couple of resources. We have Taproot Foundation and Volunteer Match. They're both volunteer recruiting sites. They're both free. Taproot is an online platform that connects nonprofit organizations with skilled volunteers. This one is interesting because you have specific professions that are doing it. So they'll share pro bono expertise. The site lists things like marketing, HR, tech, finance, and strategy. And they can do a consultation call, which would be like maybe an hour or two, or they can lead a very specific project. So again, back to like the web design, say you're looking to redesign your website, you could find a web designer that would be happy to then help you redesign your website, but once the website's done, they're done as well. Or redesign certain marketing materials and so on. The way that it works is your nonprofit posts a project or something that you need done. Then volunteers apply to do it, and you select the volunteer, they complete the project, and then you go your separate ways. There are also some free webinars. I haven't done a lot with TechSoup. That's something worth looking into a little bit more. We were looking at that not too long ago. Their big thing is they have like a lot of discounts and they have a lot of links to other places. Yeah, that's why I wouldn't be surprised if Taproot is listed there. TechSoup might be another good place to look for additional volunteer recruitment sites. But yeah, their big thing is they have a lot of they send you to a lot of different places. So TechSoup doesn't do as much anymore, but I think they have some resources and things like that too. But so yeah, they tend to be more of a point you to where you should go. So it's a good resource for that reason. Yes. Oh, and I was just mentioning they host webinars that are free as well. So you might want to keep an eye on their website to see if there are any webinars that you might be interested in regarding finding volunteers. I see discounted software, and they have resources, articles, videos, courses. Yeah, and you can put out requests on the forums. That's a really good point. Yeah, and I know TechSoup, these various places can be very confusing because they tend to partner. So there's a lot of different grant sites when I started out in 2018 that don't exist anymore. I think Candid is one where it's kind of like swallowed up several. And so it's hard to keep track of which ones are still active and which ones have kind of been swallowed up by other places. And they tend to have, or separated out into different projects. So it can be hard to keep track of them all. Yeah, that's a good point, Gentle. A lot of the volunteers are university students doing projects in RL. Absolutely, and that's how I got started in virtual worlds. Was doing a lot of my coursework. I did on virtual worlds. I want to mention to you about Taproot. You need to belong to a 501c3 org or be a public school organization in order to use it. But the fiscal sponsorship is something else that comes into play here. Where if you partner with a 501c3, if you aren't, because there are a lot of 501cs out there and a lot of other profits. But if you partner with one that is a 501c3, you can post there as well. You just kind of have to borrow their status, or they'll be the one that signs up, and then you can post. They can post on your behalf, or so on and so forth. Oops, wrong button. And yes, that only are open to verified charities, and it's not just the United States. It's also India, the UK, and EU. And I put their FAQ page there. That might be helpful if you're kind of looking for more in-depth information about whether you're eligible, because that's a great free resource. Volunteer Match is another one that's a lot like Taproot. The volunteers commitment, though, isn't time sensitive. So this is where you might find more long-term volunteers, and they don't have to have a specialty. And they also host free webinars just like Taproot does. And some of it is really great because it's just on the best practices of how to supervise volunteers, how to look for volunteers. So it's not necessarily specific to how to use Volunteer Match or how to use Taproot. They're just kind of going into like best practices for finding and keeping your volunteers. They're also a bit more lenient in who can join, and again, I've put a link there so that you can kind of look and see if you qualify. But it seemed basically if you are registered, if you've had to register for tax purposes for any reason, it seems like you're eligible. But similarly, you can partner with a 501c3 or anyone else who's eligible and use it that way. It's also global, which is kind of nice. There's not any limits by country at all. And I wanted to mention, if you've used any of these, please share about it in chat. I don't have a lot of experience with them. I'm fairly new to these. I just kind of have it as a side note in my presentation because it's so important. It could be a presentation all on its own. Once I've learned more, I will be happy to share more. And if anyone else has more experience in volunteer recruitment than I do, please think about doing your own presentation. You don't have to do it in voice even. It could just be in text, and it could be, a very short one. But if you're up for it, I think a lot of folks here could use some kind of tips there. So just kind of a side note. So here's the main portion of the presentation. We're getting back to grants. CVL has some grant resources. Yeah, I think it would be huge, Rhiannon. I would love to see. I would love to see a presentation. I would be in the front row. Yeah, that would be nice. So I've got a web page that I've created on CVL's website. I'm our main grant person, so a lot of that stuff you'll see my name plastered all over. And that's going to be your number one resource looking at this kind of stuff, because I've got a bunch of things there. So let me move on to my next point. So I mentioned the web page, the actual resources that we have. We have a grant service subscription, and this is something that we owe a huge thanks to Avacon. They approached us, seeing if we wanted to share in their grant service subscription that they're subscribing to, so that we could share it with our users. So thanks to them, we can search an extensive, it's really wonderful. There's an extensive grants database that we can search. Anyone in the nonprofit commons or CVL communities free. Now, the only thing is that the resource has a very strict copyright and use policy, so we can't share any login credentials for it. Reading Shiloh's stuff. Oh, gotcha. Yeah, definitely. So yes, we can't just hand over the login to you, but you can certainly contact us. So what we'll do is a librarian will meet with you one-on-one. We can share our screen via Zoom or Skype, and we can search the database with you in real time. And we can also work asynchronously. So if that doesn't sound great to you and you just want to send me like, here's my org, here's what I need, tell me what's available, you could certainly do that. And I'll do what I can. It also has other grant resources like guides for writing grants. So if you're interested in a specific type of resource, you can also let me know, and I can see if there's anything in there that I can download for you. I'm the main librarian for now for grants. Yeah, and I could, to be fair, I could probably get it done faster than you too, because I've got a lot more experience in it. So there's that too. Instead of you having to sift through for several hours, I can do it for you and maybe cut off 30 minutes or something like that. I'm a bit more familiar with it, so that can be helpful too, having a librarian that knows the resource. I've already done that hard work for you. I'm the main grants librarian for now. As interest grows, we can train other CVL librarians in source. Like Val also has access. Yes, absolutely. And so, yeah, I'm going to be your main contact for that. I wanted to mention I also offer free grant writing assistance. I can only do one org at a time. It's very first come, first serve. It takes grant writing in particular takes a lot of time. So I'm currently working with 3D Web Worlds. They kind of snatched me up. That's not to say that you shouldn't reach out anyway. If you're interested in grant writing assistance, go ahead and contact me. There are other grant writers in virtual worlds. I could totally share your information. Kevin Feenan with Rockcliffe had recently mentioned that he's got a couple of folks that have been interested in grant writing. So I can definitely pass on information or help you find someone that can help you if I can't. Bevan is one of them. Wonderful. So I'm not the only person with this skill. So you don't have to just wait in line for me. There are other folks that can help you. And they might even have more experience than. And similarly, if your org has similar need to 3D Web Worlds, maybe we could partner. So if you're not familiar with 3D Web Worlds, you can let me know. They're a virtual world on the web, and they're awesome. So I highly recommend checking them out. And like I said, if you have similar needs to them, then maybe we could do a partnership. So that's something worth considering as well. Oh, wonderful. Evan says you're learning about grant writing for Rockcliffe. That's great. Oh, no problem. I'm almost finished with my presentations. These are like the big ones, is getting those resources. So as long as you've got the website for CVL. Oh, that's great. You're taking Udemy. Okay. Oh, that's great. Yes. So Bevan, you might be interested in some of the resources that I have too on the website that might be useful to you. But yeah, Udemy, that'll be really great. And then I'd like to encourage folks to explore our grant resources that are in the nonprofit resource library here on NPC. Oh, that's a good question. If you do, Bevan, yeah, please share. You have the website open already. Yeah, that's something that'll be helpful to have in the chat too, and I can take a look and maybe add some of those to CVL's website, which would be awesome. I mentioned the Nonprofit Commons Resource Library. It's here. I have a URL here in the chat that kind of gives an overview of that library. Oh, thank you, Shiloh. And it also has the in-world URL. So I was trying to think of that word. It has the in-world URL to go visit it. The person that keeps track of it, Brianna, I think she's Jody Landon in Second Life, is very busy. So if you go in there and something isn't there that you need, you can let me know, or you can let Jody know, and she'll do what she can to add it. She's just, paying bills tends to come first when it comes to getting stuff populated for your volunteer activities. So, but that is her Second Life URL, and I think there's also ooh, one that starts today. Nice. And that's a good point too. If you are interested in writing, like say you're a pretty decent writer yourself and you want to write your own grant proposal, you could always approach someone like me or like Bevan and say, hey, I wrote this. Can you take a second look? You could also do it that way too, if you've already got some ideas. And then I also have a resource highlighted on CVL's website, which is my 2020 grants presentation. And not that many, just a couple. And there is a link to some grant seeking and writing resources that I developed based on the grant writing course I took. The list is what I developed. I didn't actually develop the resources. It's a pretty great comprehensive list of things, and I've got a direct link to that. It is also linked on the website, but there's a direct link there as well. And that's it for me. Oh, perfect. Thank you, Shiloh. Thank you for attending the presentation highlighting CVL's grant resources. Feel free to contact me if you'd like to meet with the CVL librarian for grant seeking assistance.